Hello and welcome to the Touchdown NFL podcast. It's week 12. Myself, Tayyib and Willow back in for this one, usual crowd. An interesting week of football, guys. As we were just talking just before we got on, a really spread out weekend with obviously the Thanksgiving games, the Black Friday games, the merits of which we'll talk about in a moment. And then obviously we had the Sunday slate, which was in itself kind of weird. Obviously the early slate was dreadful and some good games late towards the end, obviously with the Eagles and Bills and things like that. But yeah, weird weekend, and I just want to welcome you both in and kind of kick off with what do we think about Black Friday and this weekend so far?
I think let Tabe jump in, considering the lines of the Thanksgiving team,
right? I enjoyed the Black Friday game. Like, I'll be honest, I thought when it was first announced,
straight over the lines loss.
Yeah, well,
lost right over it.
losing the waxing Gibbons. Do you know what it is? It was funny, right? Like Ash from like the Channel 5 show that shows on Sunday mornings, like tweeted out, this would be a new tradition that like the Lions always lose on Thanksgiving, and I was like, we'll just start our own tradition of winning the NFC North for like the rest of eternity. You know what I mean? So like that's what we'll do instead. Flaming waxing Gibbons, yeah. Do you know, it's just a bad day. Like I'm not getting into too much, but like that game, that was the worst that the offensive line had ever played. Like per Pro Football Focus, that was the most pressures they'd ever given up in 2 and a bit years that they've all been together. Like ultimately, some quarterbacks, the exception quarterbacks like your Herberts and your Josh Allens and Jalen Hurts and Mahomes and these people can kind of still find a way. Guys like Goff, Kirk Cousins, kind of Matt Ryan of that time, like when kind of the pocket is not protected and the offensive line plays that badly, realistically, what are you going to do? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just one of those days where, like I said on the thing, I've not seen the offensive line kind of play that badly in like 3 years. You think you've got like 3 perennial all-pro caliber guys and then kind of a Pro Bowl guy in Graham Glasgow, and they were just like the 4 of them were really, really bad. I think, again, like not to go into the PFF grading type of thing, but Graham Glasgow's been really good, had a grade of 2.2. You know what I mean? Like, realistically, you're just not going to win any games if your offensive line isn't very good. So like that was bad. The Black Friday game was good for like what it was, which was like Miami obviously beating a very bad offense. Like the Hail Mary interception return was just nuts. I actually liked the fact that it was like at a normal time for us, because when they first announced it, I thought this is going to be like this is going to be like 2 a.m, 1 a.m, like night time, like American time. So like to be fair, like 8 o'clock in an evening on a Friday night, like it worked fine from that point of view. I guess Amazon probably made like a financial killing off it. So like it probably worked for them, and I think for the league it was okay. Like I don't think it really makes that much of a difference. Like now Miami are going to have an extended rest before they play again next Sunday, so like probably worked out okay. It was all right. I didn't mind it at all.
I mean, I didn't watch it because I was watching the Leeds game, but as a concept, it's like you say, it's just about making the money, isn't it?
Yeah, you missed a thriller. No, I like the Black Friday as well. Just to touch on the Amazon making a killing off of it, they paid $100 million for that game. The reason it exists at that time frame, I've done a little bit of research into it as part of my super left wing stance on the podcast. They've got America has some sort of blackout. So similar to our 3 p.m. blackouts. You can't broadcast football at 3 o'clock on a Saturday because it will interfere with other lower leagues, etc. You can't broadcast NFL games if they're going to clash with high school or college.
Right. Yeah.
I guess timeframes. So Amazon were more than happy to pay for a game when it's a public holiday anyway, as far as I'm concerned. So like people are going to be off and able to go. Therefore, people are going to be staying in to watch the NFL, which means that they don't go to shops to take advantage of Black Friday offers. So they're going to allow Amazon to get advertising in their own home, specialized advertising through Amazon Prime. That's how Amazon make their money, baby. It's a sick, twisted, it's a horrible world we live in. But I did enjoy watching football on 8 o'clock on a Friday night. And that's a failing of my part. And it was an awful game, by and large. I mean, the Jets I feel so sorry for the Jets defense because they're really trying so hard to do anything. And then they've got like, his name Boyle, just like, he's starting again next week. And he's going to have the best game. Spoiler alert, the Falcons are playing him next week. So he's going to look like an all-pro. I like that. The Thanksgiving games anyway I always quite like just sitting down on a random Thursday and just watching 2.5 games of football before I have to go to bed. But you're right, you felt it on the Sunday. It was a weekend where, I mean, we'll get onto it when we get to our games of the week or whatever, but mine is by virtue of it being my team against a team I really don't like. So yeah, that kind of says where we are with things. But yeah, no, Black Friday can stay. Just shop with local. Use your high streets, all that good stuff. Don't give in to the Amazon machine. I can't be propaganding on the podcast against Amazon.
Anti-propaganda. Yeah, no, I like it. Yeah, no, you're right, because people watching football, they're on the phones in the commercial breaks, in half time, in the time outs. It's like, it's just pushing people to go on Amazon. They've got enough money, haven't they? Bezos and all these lads.
We've got the Premier League. Got Amazon fixtures coming up soon, and I can't wait for them to say, "Oh, why don't you buy Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse on Blu-ray for like £13?" And I'll be like, "Oh, I couldn't I? Yeah, that'd be great." And it's like, don't do it. Just be strong. Like, yeah. Anyway, that's not what we're here for. But yeah, if anyone takes anything from this podcast, there are other shops available.
Yeah, absolutely. Unless Amazon wants to sponsor us $100 million to do our podcast, and then we'll slap all the advertisement all over it that we want.
I am malleable in that regard. Yes, yeah, I am willing to change.
Everyone's got a price. The other news before we get into our usual segments is obviously Frank Reich fired today, as we record on the Monday evening. What do we think of this? Because obviously it's not gone well for the Panthers, and that's maybe an understatement. But they've also not got a lot going for them. So what did they expect? What does everyone think?
Yeah, I'll be very, very honest. Yeah. This one kind of surprised me because I just assumed that they would wait till the end of the season before sort of taking stock. I just assumed that they would go, right, well, clearly this isn't going anywhere. Let's just get to the end of the year and go from there. I mean, by all accounts, the owner was apoplectic after the game yesterday, and rightly so. They're atrocious. But like you say, they haven't got a great deal going for them. Like on either side of the ball, I feel bad for Bryce Young because he's been put in a position where he's probably not ready to play in the NFL just yet. But he's the starter anyway. Throw into guys who can't get separation, who can't stay fit. Run game doesn't really exist. Offensive line is, I mean, you wrote about it, so you know for what this team is just pretty poor at the moment in general. But the thing that makes me kind of, I mean, the best thing going for the Panthers long term is number one, the division they're in. I talk about enough about the NFC South, but you couldn't ask to be in a better division if you're trying to go from worst to first in a year. But I get the same feeling around them as I did the 2016 Los Angeles Rams, who were obviously pretty bad. They started the season okay, but then it all spiraled out of control and they fired everyone. But they just traded for Jared Goff, first overall pick, who was really struggling to find his way in an offense that didn't really exist outside of Todd Gurley. And then they just went and got Sean McVay, and that was it. I appreciate it's not as easy as just going, well, let's just go get another Sean McVay, because everyone will be doing it. But yeah, there is a precedent to be like a precedent has been set that you can take your struggling former first overall sort of quarterback and kind of turn it around fairly quickly with the right sort of people making those decisions. Now, the question for me has to be how much of a say is. I appreciate that he owns the team and spent billions of dollars to own the team, and therefore you have the right to run it however you want to run it. But how much of a say is the owner having over footballing matters when you have coaches and general managers who are actually experienced in the sport hired to do or make those decisions? That would be the question I would have, and I think that would be a question that a lot of head coaches will probably have if they get interviews. But also, there are only 32 head coaching jobs in the NFL. Somebody's going to want it. Like literally anybody will. They will have that job filled, no problem whatsoever. But it's got to be they've got to get this right. They're now onto what will be their fourth permanent head coach in 6 years, 5 years, 6 years, whenever Tepper took over. So I mean, it's a lot of turnover and not a lot of success. They've got to get this one right. It felt like this one was on the right path to begin with their all-star coaching staff and whatever. But we'll see. Yeah.
Yeah.
Talked a lot there.
What do you think about that? It's all good.
Yeah.
Say what you think.
Well, at first I feel bad for Frank Reich, and particularly like Deuce Staley. Deuce Staley was the Lions' assistant head coach the last 2 seasons, but because his mum wasn't very well and she's from Carolina, I think that's where he's from. He decided to take that job, and then obviously he's been dumped out, kind of 11 weeks in or 12 weeks in. So from that point of view, like I feel bad for them. What I find strange about this one is like, how come the GM's still in the job? Because like this is like a weirdly kind of, now maybe he'll go at the end of the season. I'll be honest, I thought Frank Reich would have probably gone at the end of the season as well. So I kind of find it like ultimately I think the writing was on the wall for him, just because like this is a results business and the results weren't good enough. But what I find strange is like Adam Thielen's been a really good player in his career, but at this point in his career, he really shouldn't be any team's number one wide receiver. Like you think that wasn't his role in Minnesota when Stephon Diggs was there. Stephon Diggs was WR1, and then when Justin Jefferson was there, Justin Jefferson was, and yet Thielen's been asked to kind of carry the load for that passing attack because nobody else can stay fit, and the guys that are fit can never get open. So that's like a poorly constructed roster decision. Like same with the offensive line, it feels like it's a lot of kind of projected or like project guys from the draft and a lot of kind of veterans that have bounced around the league. It just feels like it was a bad roster, and I think it's difficult then to put a quarterback in who's new to the league with a coaching staff that maybe like the rumor was always there, like that they wanted CJ Stroud. Now I suppose like one of these things, because CJ Stroud's been really good, that rumor's always going to grow legs. But it can't be good for the confidence of the quarterback if there's murmurings like from within like the local media or kind of the national media that like, well, we didn't really want you, but the guy that owns the team made the decision. So I think from that point of view, it's surprising that Scott Fitterer's still there, because I thought like they'd just clean house altogether. But I don't know like how you like rectify it, because like that's like I get what Thomas is saying about 32 jobs, but like I was just reading, so like between like David Tepper, the Panthers, and the FC Charlotte, the MLS team, they've sacked 4 head coaches in the last 18 months, which is like that's like, you know, like the Pozzo family and Massimo Cellino and all these different people, like that's kind of how like it is, where like it's just a revolving door. So I feel like I don't know, it's like they've not really got a plan there, and I'm not sure like how much of that is then at the owner's door, at the general manager's door. Like it feels like I don't know. It's a weird dynamic, because to me, I always feel like a strong general manager would say to an owner, "Well, no, like we're all on board with this player. We're drafting him irrespective of what you say." So then is Fitterer there just because like he knows that like he's not going to challenge David Tepper? Like it's a weird situation I find between like how that team's run. Like you see a lot of like even the teams that don't necessarily win a ton, but like you can understand like how they're run. So like for example, Chris Ballard in Indianapolis, he's kind of the head guy. Like Jim Irsay tweets a lot, but he doesn't really get involved with like the football side of things unless it's like a contract situation. But in terms of drafting this player or that player, he doesn't get involved. Jerry Jones is on the other side, where he gets involved pretty much as he can be. Where Carolina, it feels kind of strange how they're running it all. And that's kind of my big concern going forward. If I was a head coach going for the interview, I'm like, well, who's calling the shots here? You know, like I'm answering to you, but is the general manager in charge? Like it's that whole thing of like, you know, who's picking the players? Like, why are these players and why are they getting drafted? Is it because of you, the owner? Is it because of the general manager? Is the head coach getting an input into it? Like, it's a really kind of strange mix. So I think, like, for Frank Reich and Bryce Young and these coaches, they were probably on a hiding to nothing when you look at that roster. I didn't think it would be this bad. But as I said, like, ultimately, when, like, you know, you're the guy that writes the checks, you get to make those final decisions, even though, as I said, you look at David Tepper's track record, it's not very good so far.
Yeah, it's a really good point about Charlotte FC as well, because he's not a patient man. He's definitely a man with an itchy trigger finger. You guys summed up pretty well, so I won't say too much more on this. I've written about this over at the Touchdown today, so if you listen to this when this comes out on Tuesday, head over there if you want my thoughts. I haven't put this in our memeable moments a bit later on, but Tepper sounds like that all acts like the meme with the guy riding a bike who then puts a stick in the spokes and then says, you know, why am I hurt or whatever? Because he just fires everyone and he doesn't have any sort of direction. They just seem a bit rudderless at the moment, and it does feel like a long way back at this moment for Carolina. You know, with the lack of first round picks next year and things like that. So yeah, we'll see how they get on. But yeah, let's move into talking points for the weekend then. Tay, we'll kick off with you because this was, arguably one of the games of the week that between two actual good teams that we kind of didn't get much of this week.
Yeah, I think the Eagles obviously have the best record now in the league, and if they win on Sunday, they're probably going to be locked up for the number 1 seed again. I don't think they've played anywhere near as well as what they did last season. Last season, they were kind of blowing teams away. Look at their last 4 games. They've all won them by 1 score. Some obviously even less, and you could argue the drop from Valdez-Scantling, they should have won. Kansas City should have beaten them the other night. Last week. So, it feels like a very different type of Eagles team. But I think Romo said something that stuck out for me. Like, they've always got an answer. It's like I look at other teams and it feels like if they're not able to play at their best or like their perceived strength is taken away. So you look at like when the 49ers had McCaffrey hurt and Debo was hurt and the left tackle was out. That's obviously when they had that dip in form when they lost 3 in a row. You look at the Lions on Thursday. The offensive line doesn't play very well. The offense doesn't play very well. Feels like with the Eagles, like yesterday they didn't have Lane Johnson. They figured out a way to win. Jalen Hurts didn't play amazing. Like Josh Allen was better out of the two. And yet, the other night against Kansas City, AJ Brown was really quiet. Do you know what I mean? He had 1 catch, I think, for 8 yards. Like Kansas City shut him down. But then Devonta Smith comes to the fore in that game. Like I just feel like they're the team. I don't think they're that much better than everybody else. Like they're still like Kansas City very good, Baltimore very good, San Francisco good, Dallas is good. But I think the Eagles have got the best kind of we can work this out like type of thing. Like it reminds me a bit like United kind of like obviously under Alex Ferguson where they didn't necessarily play the best every single week, but they found ways of winning different ways. And I think that's what this Eagles team have got is they can run over teams, they can pass teams, they've got multiple options in the run game. The quarterback's a running threat and a passing threat. They got more than one really good receiver. They got a stable of backs, and the other thing as well, they got like a really good like rotating cast of pass rushers. So I think that allows them to be like so kind of difficult to beat. Like I look at them and I think like there's a line like if we had to play them, how would you beat them? I'm like, well, I'm not sure. Like there's because it's like that thing of like you cut the snake's head off and it grows back again. That's kind of what the Eagles are like. They keep finding ways of like, okay, you shut our run game down. Okay, we'll just start passing the ball a little bit better. You shut our passing game down. We'll run the ball really well against you guys. Like they've just got a little bit of everything, and I think that's what makes them so dangerous this year. Is they look like they've come through a lot of very, very tough games, and they haven't necessarily played well in all of them. Certainly for spells in those games, like the other team has been better. And yet somehow they've kept finding ways of winning. And I think that's like the biggest attribute that this lot have got right now. And I think that's what makes them so difficult to beat. Like in terms of looking forward in the NFC playoffs is they've got so many more answers than everybody else. They can win with plan B and plan C, not just if everything's clicking, we're going to give you a really good game, even if we're not at our best. Like you could argue that they should have lost yesterday, just like they should have lost against Kansas City, just like Dallas had their chances, just like Washington had their chances at FedEx Field. And like Washington, not a great team. Yet, like in those big moments, Philadelphia seem to have the right answers and come through better than anybody else. I think that's what makes them. I don't know if it's a scary proposition because you never know in a one and done situation, but it's going to take like something pretty special for somebody to beat them because I just feel like they've got more answers than everybody else. I feel like everybody else is reliant on either a core of players or a certain strength, certainly in the NFC, where Philly, like, they look as if, like, even if Jalen Hurts plays badly, it feels like they can still win. Like, you wouldn't say that about Dak Prescott. If Dak plays a bad game, chances are the Cowboys are going to lose. If Jared Goff plays a bad game, the Lions are going to lose. Like, it feels like, I don't know, it's almost like they're bulletproof. Not necessarily bulletproof, but like maybe they just, I don't know, it's kind of hard to describe, but they just look so much more kind of complete as a team in terms of
it comes
all
from a strength
round.
in depth, doesn't it? Because
Yeah,
they've built
that's
their
what it
roster
is.
with a
Like
strength in
the
depth.
way the way that roster's built, like so, like for example, again, I'll use my own team, but like if you took Hassan Reddick out of the Eagles will still rush the passer very, very well. If you took Aiden Hutchinson out of the Lions wouldn't rush the passer very well. So
Yeah.
because they don't have another guy on the edge that where they do with people like Josh Sweat and even from the interior, with Fletcher Cox and these people. And that's what I think makes it so difficult to beat them. Like it's one of those, if this was like an NBA best of 7 in each playoff round, I think the Eagles would win pretty comfortably. because of like the depth that they've got and the fact that they can win in multiple ways. But even in a one-off situation, I feel like there's not a game script or a game formula that you can take them into, and they'll be like, "We're worried now." Like I don't see it, and that's kind of my big talking point. Is they've won ugly, but they're winning in so many different variations, and they had a little bit of luck because, as I said, like Valdez-Scantling doesn't drop the ball, Kansas City win that game, But they've cashed in at those moments when they've had those lucky breaks, and as I said, like they're just punishing teams for it.
Yeah, I think you need those, don't you, as well? And do you know what you mentioned Manchester United under Alex Ferguson, but the team that, or the sort of era that I was thinking of, in terms of making this kind of cross football reference that we kind of love to do on this pod, but they remind me of Chelsea under Mourinho, where they're just grinding teams down and winning,
there's a little
winning
bit of that as well.
narrow games. I think. I don't know what you guys think of that, but that's what cropped up into my mind anyway. And like you say, they've got a strength in depth, and they've got ways that they can beat you quite easily. No matter what happens in the game, and they've been there before as well. They've got the experience to say, yeah, fine, half time we're down, but we don't blink, and we can go on and win the second half and win the game overall. I don't know if you muted yourself, by the way, Tayyip.
Oh yeah. I just didn't want to interrupt, but yeah, like I think that's the biggest strength of it. Like a month ago, we were talking about AJ Brown. Yesterday, Devontae Smith was the leading receiver.
Yeah.
It's just that thing of like they've got so many more answers. Where, like, say for example, Dallas, like it's hard to see them if you took CD Lamb out of the game, or if a team shut CD Lamb out. It's hard to see how they could kind of sustain a passing attack for 4 quarters against a really good defense. Philadelphia can do that. Same with, like, the 49ers are slightly different in that they're probably the most matched in terms of certain skill positions. But, like, if you took St. Brown out of the Lions, again, it's difficult to see how they could sustain a passing attack without him. Where with the Eagles, it's like, okay, well, AJ Brown, teams are taking him out of the game now. We'll just go to somebody else. And I think that's kind of where the way they've built that roster, like they've got a formula of winning so many different types of games that I think makes them so difficult to beat. Certain teams, I think, have to have. I certainly think with Dallas and Detroit, they've got to play their own style of game and be in their own like game script to win it. I think with the Eagles, you can say, oh well, this is a run first game where defenses are going to be on top and it's going to be about field territory. They're fine with that. If it becomes a shootout and it's end to end, they're fine with that. I think they can live in kind of a lot of different types of games and be like, well, we're still favorites and we're still good enough to win this game, even with some injuries. So I think that's kind of what makes it so difficult to beat them. As I said, like they've kind of scraped by in the last 4 or 5 weeks. They're still undefeated. They're still beating everyone. Everyone talked about this gauntlet of games. They're beating Dallas. They're beating Kansas City. They're beating Buffalo. They got San Francisco next week. Like, as I said, it's hard to see how somebody's going to beat them. You're going to have to play a pretty perfect game.
Yeah, they're going to be playing football deep into January, I feel. But yeah, we'll move on. Thomas, we'll come to you before I wind you up with mine. I'm going to give a shout out to some special teams.
Yeah, so listen, I watched the Atlanta Falcons yesterday, as you well know. Younghoe Koo kicked a field goal right at the very, very end. And with that kick, he became the most accurate field goal kicker in NFL history. It took Justin Tucker to miss a field goal on Sunday Night Football. But Younghoe Koo is now 90% in his kicking. He has made 90% of the field goals that he has kicked. Off of a minimum of 100 kicks. The question I'm basically posing is, do we need to give kickers more credit in the modern day, or is it too easy to? I'm not saying is it too easy to be a kicker, like that couldn't be, but is the deck kind of stacked in their favor when it comes to those kicks? The updated top 5 most accurate kickers of ever is Younghoe Koo, Justin Tucker, Harrison Butker, Daniel Carlson, and Chris Boswell, all of which are playing currently, all of which have an accuracy of 87% or higher across a minimum of 100 attempts. So that's pretty good. Josh Lambo is next, and he's sort of in the league, but not really, kind of thing. So I know that they moved the PAT back to try and make it more difficult because it just became automatic, and then those became automatic, and now field goals from that range are just becoming automatic because they just have to kick them anyway. we saw kicks yesterday of 55, 60. I think there was a 58-yard. Was it the Eagles yesterday with a 58-yarder to take it to overtime? Or I fell asleep during that one, not because it was boring, but because it was late and I have a job. But like in the rain and the wind and the cold, like that's unheard of up until like the modern day. Kickers, are they respected enough or not? I will open the floor.
I think you're right. I think we are going through like just a bit of a freaky age because he's nowhere near. I was waiting for you to say what the qualifying amount of kicks was because I know Cameron Dicker's like 95% as well, but he's only got 40 kicks. I mean, I looked it up as you were speaking after you said 100. But there's a lot of good kickers, and it pains me that Koo is so good now because obviously we know where he started and we know how bad he was for his first team. I think as well what this actually might do is it. You know, we hear a lot about coaches now going for it a lot on fourth down. Is it time just to lean back into these kickers? You know, will it kind of spin around in another kind of way? In that, you know, because they're so automatic from quite a long way out now, especially these top guys. You know, will teams just start thinking, well, I'm just going to take the points. I'm not going to risk it. Turns out the analytics say, I guess, doesn't it? But, you know, 3 points is better than a chance of no points, isn't it? In some respects, depending on the game situation, things like that. But no, I think you're right. Obviously, Tucker's been the gold standard for many, many years. And then you've got this sort of new era that's coming up. You know, Butker in particular has obviously been clutching Super Bowls. He's been there. He's done that kind of thing that I was talking about with the Eagles a second ago. You know, he knows even in the big moments that he can do it. And, you know, you've got players kicking at 90% and more in smaller sample sizes. What can be done? You know, you just got to take it further, haven't you? Or maybe it goes to an angled kick, rather than it being between the hashes. I don't know. I don't really want them to mess about with it too much. I always pains me to say I don't really want them to mess about the game too much. You just got to respect the fact that these guys are just really good at their jobs at the end of the day. And I think, like you say, maybe we should, as fans, pay more attention to special teams and pay more respect to these guys because they are very good at the jobs, as I said before, at an uncanny rate at the minute.
Yeah, I think the one thing, the guys that Thomas mentioned, those guys are obviously really, really good. I think once teams find a good kicker, you're just never going to let him go. Do you know what I mean? Like once, because we've seen teams when they've started searching for kickers go on this kind of carousel of just going through player after player after player because they're not able to find So I feel like there's probably a big disparity between the really kind of top guys.
Yeah.
And a lot of guys that kind of bounce around the league a lot, who kind of find a job, and then teams might think, oh, well, we can upgrade on him. We'll go in another direction, and then that guy doesn't quite. So I think those guys, like your Boswells, your Tuckers, Harrison Butker, Jake Elliott will probably be right up there in terms of clutch kicker. Yeah. I think those guys will just never let go by teams. I think it's partly down to like what the Patriots did in the early 2000s. Like they showed marginal gains and all that with Vinatieri. They arguably don't have 3, maybe 2 Super Bowls if they don't have Adam Vinatieri on the field. So I think in those big moments, particularly in tight playoff games, you want somebody that's automatic. I wonder if the thing about the completion percentages being higher. Again, this isn't based on any stats. I just feel is there more indoor stadiums now than maybe there was 30 years ago?
There will be, yeah.
Obviously, I'm just saying from cold weather cities, if they ever wanted to host Super Bowls, they need to have indoor stadiums or roofs. So Detroit obviously hosted a Super Ford Field has a roof. Minnesota hosted a Super Bowl. US Bank Stadium has a roof. The new stadium in Chicago will probably have a roof because they'll want to host a Super Bowl as well. So that's my only other not to take away from someone like Justin Tucker who kicks it outdoors all the time. But certain guys, so this isn't to take anything away from Young Wei Koo. I've seen, but some of those kicks he makes at Mercedes-Benz Stadium are just ridiculous. A part of me thinks they're probably not doable if you're playing in the rain of Cleveland or somewhere. You know, I think part of it might be down to that. You look at the NFC South, 2 teams, one team plays in Florida in warm weather conditions, and 2 of those teams are indoor teams. So Will Lutz was always really, really good indoors in New Orleans. You look at the new guy in Dallas, Aubrey Thomas. I think that's his name, the former MLS player. Now he's the kicker. He started really, really well, but again, you look at where he kicks a lot of his games. They're indoors at AT&T Stadium. So part of me is wondering if it's to do with that. I would like to see angled kicks purely and simply just so like more Twitter gets like the rugby versus NFL debate fired. Do you know what I mean? Obviously in rugby union and in rugby league they kick off the tee as well from angles. So like that would be cool to see just from like how good are these guys? Because I always said it like I bet you these guys like behind closed doors in like non-pressure situations are like probably all automatic. Do you know what I mean? Like if you just like if the ball
from
penalty
like
shootout
70, 80 yards,
yeah,
probably in
yeah,
some
like
respects. Yeah.
like some of the Harrison Butker, I think didn't he try like a 70-yard one a few seasons ago at the end of a half? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like I bet you like from like behind closed doors, they're probably all really, really, really good. So that's why I'd like to see the angled thing just for the challenge of it. But I think part of me thinks like with Thomas's point is we probably don't appreciate them enough because in really tight games, as I said, like the Patriots arguably may not have 2 or 3 of their Super Bowls without Adam Vinatieri. You look at Harrison Butker made the game-winning kick in last year's Super Bowl. Jake Elliott made a really big one in the Super Bowl when Philadelphia beat New England. And I'll be honest, as like a Lions and a Chargers fan here, we know the other side of this conversation of having ridiculous kicking situations. You know what I mean? Of like all hell kind of breaking loose. We just saw like with Dallas last year against Tampa, Brett Maher missed 4, and then obviously he went to the Rams, and then the Rams like cut him because again, like he struggled with whatever situation he was in. There was a famous game, Blair Walsh missed one from about really close in. I think they were playing like the Minnesota versus Seattle game. I think maybe 2015, 2016. Blair Walsh missed one from like really close in. So like they are like important because playoff games can come down to them. And we probably don't appreciate them, but I think it's because like the really top guys make it look automatic. Like they do. Like it's one of those weird positions where you've got like a real group of like really good players. And then, as I said, like a load of guys that just bounce around the league because they're kind of just much of a muchness. So it's kind of strange. Maybe we should just appreciate people like Justin Tucker and Harrison Butker more.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I'm pleased that the Chargers have found, someone who looks like a good one. And, it's one of those positions, isn't it, where you remember the really good ones, the kind of guys that we're all referencing here. And then you remember the really bad ones. Like, is it Cody Park who did like the double doink and things like that for Chicago?
Yeah.
Obviously, you mentioned Blair Walsh. I remember that game. Super good memory from you, by the way, calling that, yeah.
Wasn't that the one where it was about -15, like Fahrenheit as well? It was like colder than cold. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think it
So
was when they were
basically
building. It was when they were building the new stadium, and it was one of the coldest games they've had. But yeah, like he missed one, and then that kind of sent him on like a downward path. As I said, we don't really appreciate the good ones. I think because like they make it look so easy. Like the Tucker one against Detroit. That's like always the Sky Sports signature. Still like irritates me really badly whenever the NFL's coming on. Like it's true, like 5 o'clock whenever the NFL's coming on Sky, they'll show like the Tucker field goal. But it's like it's just like this is insane. But like the really good guys, I think like we probably should praise them a lot more than what we do.
Yeah, and Joe obviously mentioned Dustin Hopkins last week, haven't we? So maybe we're doing that a little bit by mentioning kickers twice in 2 weeks. So yeah, we'll keep an eye on them as well. But yeah, let's get Willow wound up now because I'm going to talk about Sean Payton and ask a very important question actually, and obviously one that pains me as well just as much because I was more than happy to kick Sean Payton when he was down at the beginning of the season, and now he's kind of making us all look a bit silly, which is a bit bad, isn't it? Denver won 5 in a row, including against the Chiefs and the Bills. And yeah, with the Chargers kind of sinking and the Raiders not having a QB, unexpectedly, it seems like Denver are the next best team in the AFC West. And obviously, we talked about with Joe, obviously Browns fan, we talked about how historic that defense is. 29 points, not to be stiffed at, even though Cleveland played their part with 3 fumbles. And it's not even that Russ is like cooking again, is it? It's that Payton has obviously done something to take them from laughingstock to at least respectability. So I know you're dying to get in on Sean Payton and giving him a touch of praise. So Will, I'll come to you first. What do you think about Payton?
No, they're not good. I refuse to buy into the idea that the Sean Payton goes are anything more than in a touch of good form. You've got to give credit where it's due. Their recent form has been sort of really good, and I mean that win against the Chiefs will go down probably in the season as their signature, regardless of what they do. If they do get into playoffs or whatever, that they'll look back at that as the point where they kind of figure themselves out. not seeing a lot of particularly good teams that they've played recently. Bills, I mean, they're a bit of a weird team, aren't they? No, Bills are good. I still kind of rate the Bills. That one yesterday was so weird because the Browns are just clearly. I mean, Sean Watson's injured, and I don't think he's had a particularly good season anyway. But like I forget the guy's name. Is it Dorian?
Thompson Robinson.
There you go. DTR was looking kind of fine, and then he just got like smashed up, and then it all kind of fell apart a bit. But you got to give the Broncos credit for like just creating that environment. And you're right, like, and appreciate that a lot of the points would have come off of Brown's offensive struggles, but it takes something to turn that into kind of points. So yeah, they're in a bit of form. Obviously, Texans coming up next, and then sort of the Chargers after that. Which I will never be a bigger Chargers fan than I will be on Sunday, the 10th of December. I don't know. I'm finding it really difficult to say anything about this because I too was very much on the Sean Payton's career's over. This is hilarious train, and now they've won. Was it 6 games? Yeah. I mean, listen. I at no point do I. The one thing that I will say about the Patriots, the Broncos right now, is that at no point do I watch them and think that they can win. And I don't know if that's just me with my prejudices, and I don't know if that's also me watching a team that is clearly quite flawed, doing things that I don't think are sustainable over against teams that are kind of in ruts themselves. I'm willing to lean in on the latter rather than the former. I refuse to believe that my prejudices could interfere with how I view a team. But yeah, fair enough, fair play to them to get into this position where their season is kind of meaningful. Like at the end of the day, you want to be, as a fan of a team or as an organization, you want to be going into December with like playoff permutations. It's still alive in that sense. Like you can talk all you like about sort of draft space, a draft pick and standing and all that nonsense, but at the end of the day, if you don't want to watch your team in January, regardless of whether you're going to get smashed or not, I don't really know why you would kind of follow it. So fair enough for being in that position. I will hold judgment until the last week before handing out any flowers or whatever. Yeah, we'll go with that.
That was pretty magnanimous.
I thought that was very diplomatic. Yeah,
I think it was. I think you trod the line between being actually quite complimentary and not very well.
Also stubborn. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway,
you were bordering towards the Principal Skinner. Maybe it's the children that are wrong kind of meme as well. Say, what do you reckon about the Broncos? Are they for real? Are they going to make the playoffs?
I don't know if they're for real. They kind of remind me a little bit of the Giants from last year. I think through the last 5 weeks, I think the Broncos have like the best turnover differential in the NFL. So like how long that can be kind of carried on for, like who knows? But I suppose what they're not doing is they're not beating themselves with that. Like so they're capitalizing on opponents' mistakes. They're not beating themselves. It would have been very easy for that team to like be like completely like fractured and broken after the 70-point thing in Miami. So like to get them back from like what looked like football and rock bottom into some form of competitiveness, like they are playing their backsides off for Sean Payton. So from that point of view, you got to give them a lot of credit. As I said, like I don't know if like realistically like how long the kind of turnover kind of differential can continue. They're capitalizing off it. Russell Wilson's not making any mistakes. He's not back to where he was at Seattle. I don't think that'll ever come back. At this point in his career, he's less mobile. So like, that kind of thing might never come back. But they're playing clean football. They're playing smart football. And they're not making any mistakes and kind of relying on their opponents to make mistakes. So as I said, like this, the Giants formula and it worked for them. Can they make the playoff? I mean, who would you fancy though? Like Indianapolis are currently the 7th seed. Because Indianapolis already beaten Houston. Houston are still there. Cleveland is a massive outlier now because, like, with this offense, like, I don't know where that's going to go. Like, because at least with Deshaun Watson, even though he hadn't played very well to the price of his contract, he was still playing better than what DTR did yesterday. And again, that's not a knock on him. He's a rookie. Like it's hard work to come in as a rookie and play quarterback at a high level in the NFL. So like for the Browns, like I don't, but then like Buffalo at 6-6, still like it's a weird one. Like I don't know who's gonna win that final wild card spot. Denver could, because you only need to catch fire at the right point in the season and you can sneak in. I don't think they're necessarily for real. They're probably going to be like what Pittsburgh were or Philadelphia were a few seasons ago when they first introduced a 7 seed. They're probably just going to be a bit of an annoyance for whoever they end up playing if they do qualify for the playoffs. Yeah. But like, at least you got to give credit, because it would have been very, very easy for that team to kind of really split after the Miami loss, because they were the butt of all jokes and they were rock bottom. As I said, Sean Payton's probably never had that kind of feeling in the game ever in his career. Certainly Russell Wilson wouldn't. Nobody would have, conceding 70 points. Like, it's going to be one of the things that we remember for a long, long time after this season's finished. So to get back from what looked like the absolute pits into a competitive state is really, really good. I don't think they're necessarily a great team, but they're winning at the right time of the season, and that 7th spot is still up for grabs.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the sort of second tier of the AFC playoffs is kind of a bit of a muddy mess, isn't it? We'll talk about a few teams as we move on through this and this podcast and the rest of the season, but yeah, it's all up for grabs. Well, let's just say that and kind of leave it there, I think. But move on to our games of the week then. And Tayyib, you're gonna have to explain yourself how you have got your game of the week as the Pats versus the Giants.
Do you know, this is just, as I said, like, it was kind of, I wasn't sure what to pick, like, from the early slate of games. But I went with this one for one reason in particular. I think this might be the first time ever that a team has lost a game before the game actually was even played. Because obviously the Patriots had a bye week last week, so they've had effectively the best part of 2 weeks off. So they could have worked out something. But even during the bye week, it was like Will Greer took snaps at starting quarterback. Mac Jones took snaps at starting quarterback. Bailey Zappi. Even they did some wildcat stuff with Malik Cunningham. So this is within 2 weeks, they've basically effectively, like, remember the old days when football teams used to bring people on trial, like Premier League football clubs would bring people on trial. You know what I mean? Like that's what effectively the Patriots have done for the last 2 weeks, is they've had like a trial at quarterback. And even on the day of the game, I remember seeing a tweet. So like the plan is for Mac Jones to start, but Bailey Zappi will also play. And I'm thinking, this has got to be like, how can you not know at this point? Like, they're all kind of obviously not very good, but like, you just got to pick somebody and go with it. Do you know what I mean? So like, and this is where I'm saying, like, it felt like, like teams always script players out to start a game. It was like they didn't have a script for Mac Jones. Like, he had played one half, threw 2 interceptions, had 4 turnover-worthy plays, so he could have thrown 4 interceptions in total. I think had a quarterback rating of, got it here, 27.8 passer rating. He completed 12 of his passes for 89 yards in that first half. Like, it was like, you've got 2 weeks to find a plan against it. Like, again, Giants aren't like, the Kansas City Chiefs or the Eagles or whoever. The Giants are kind of being in a rut themselves. So they had 2 weeks to prepare for that. And I feel like if they hadn't have messed around with finding out, well, what does this guy look like at quarterback? And what does this, they might have had at least 10 to 15 plays of Mac Jones that might have given them something more than what he did. Because the weird thing is, when Zappi came in, on Zappi's very first drive, they would have had a package of plays scripted for him. They scored a touchdown. That was the best the offense looked that particular day yesterday. And then after that, obviously, it went downhill again because they couldn't build off of that game script. So what I'm saying is, like, how can, like, Bill Belichick spend 2 weeks and his coaching staff spend 2 weeks, like, deciding between all these quarterbacks? Granted, none of them are like, Dan Marino and these people. But nonetheless, you got to pick one and then think, well, this is the game plan that we've got for this guy. Whether it's Will Greer, Bailey Zappi, Malik, whoever it was. They decided on Mac Jones, and then they kind of just threw him to the wolves as if there was no kind of real plan behind it. And he looked terrible. He did. I feel bad for the guy now because it's so bizarre seeing how kind of composed he was 2 years ago in his rookie season to like this, whatever this is. Because like, if you said to me, like, will Mac Jones be a starting, like, he might not even have a job in the NFL next season. Like, he's played that badly. So from that point of view, from the Patriots' point of view, like, you can always level a lot of things at New England, but I never thought I could level a situation where they looked unprepared. Do you know what I mean? Like, you can say, like, oh, well, the way they draft wide receivers is, different to how they should draft or whatever. But I always thought, like, even if they were a bad team, they'd still plan to the best of their ability. It didn't look like that yesterday. So from New England's point of view, like, they got even more questions because now I'm not too sure. It's not like Bailey Zappi came in and did very well either. He had an air yards rating of 1.1 air yards per attempt, the lowest mark ever in the next gen stats era, despite throwing for a touchdown, despite actually having a touchdown. So that's kind of how bad it was. From the Giants' point of view, I think Tommy DeVito's probably going to give himself like a third choice job, which is good for him in the NFL, because let's be honest, 5 weeks ago, we all thought he was a character from the Mafia games. So like where now I think he is going to be like the third choice quarterback or like kind of practice squad guy on an NFL roster somewhere. So good for him. Good for Dayball and Wink Martindale as well, because I think the one thing with the Giants yesterday, they played really hard. Like, if there was ever an excuse for a team to just like wave the white flag and say this isn't our year, they had all those excuses with all the injuries that they've had on the offense. And fair play to Dayball and Wink Martindale, because there was like rumor yesterday morning that like massive ructions between the two. And the Giants still, like, they played really hard. Like, they're not a very good team because ultimately they overachieved last year, so the roster still wasn't very good. Then they've had so many injuries, so they're kind of like a bottom 8 team roster wise, but they are still playing very, very hard for Dayball and Wink Martindale and those guys. So like, I got to give a hat tip to them. And from a New England point of view, I'm not sure. I think like there's a famous Alan Hansen quote. Forget rock bottom; they were 10 levels below it. As I said, like, I don't know how you can kind of spend 2 weeks not knowing who your quarterback was, and then when you do decide to start whichever one, you don't have a plan for him, but you had a plan for the backup. So as I said, like, from New England's point of view, like, I just don't know how that. I don't know how a team can look so bad coming off a bye week.
Mm. Yeah, and the Patriots play the Chargers next week, so we know what's going to happen there, don't we? Maybe I'm being a bit too defeatist, but my God, if this team loses to the Patriots, then I'm just not going to.
They won't lose. I don't know if Brandon Staley would be allowed back on the flight, to be fair, like, if they do lose to New England, but I don't think they'll lose. I can't see it. Like, New England are so bad. Like, you could make a legitimate case. Like, I think they might be worse than the Panthers. Like, the Panthers are just not very talented. Same with the Patriots, but the Patriots, like, the Panthers have a plan and they're just bad. The Patriots don't even have plans anymore, which again is kind of weird to say about a Bill Belichick team.
It very much feels like the end of the era, and everyone's just kind of waiting around for it to sort of finish. Like, it's not even just sort of like nobody's.
Yeah, like, they won't fire him. It's like the Arsene Wenger thing at Arsenal. Like, I don't think anyone like would think like it'd be the right thing to fire him, but I think it's done now. Like, I don't think he'll be the coach there next year.
Yeah, that's my preseason take that would happen. So one for me, but I also said the Panthers would win the NFC South as well. So don't know that much, do I?
One God, yeah. The worst thing is, sadly, is that they're going to be in prime position to get Drake May, or that it's just going to be like, all right, the Patriots are back with a new head coach, and it's like, oh no, the nightmare begins again. So yeah, look forward to that next year and beyond.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes, because it's going to be an intriguing job, because like Tayyip said, it is like going in after Wenger, a Ferguson, a whoever. It's going to be totally different, unless they just hire Josh McDaniels for the lols and then just
that would be
spin the wheel again.
Yeah, I don't know how they do. By the way, the Panthers are mathematically still alive for the NFC South. Like, because the NFL still lists them on the official playoff picture. So if there's like a really big turnaround, they could still like mathematically win the NFC South. As I said, I keep seeing it on the thing every week. I check the playoff picture, and like the Giants and the Panthers are still alive on it. Like, mathematically, I'm like, well, what's the point of putting these teams on here anymore? Like, even our own fans don't know that. Like, they know that they're not going to be there.
Get in. I'll stop bringing that up then. That I've got it wrong, because I've not yet officially. Right then, let's move on from 2 bad football teams onto, well, Tom, go on, 2 bad football teams.
Game of the week, man. Game of the week. Right. So I don't like a lot of sports teams. I feel like that's a universal feeling. I really, really don't like the New Orleans Saints. I've never been to Atlanta. I've been to America once, to New York for a week. So I don't know any Saints fans. I've got no sort of real stake in this rivalry. But I really hate the Saints. I remember the very first season I watched the game. I was supposed to go out and play football Sunday night, but the Falcons were playing the Saints. Matt Ryan was injured. The Falcons came like that close to beating them with, I want to say, Chris Redman at quarterback. And I went and played the second half of this sort of five-a-side thing. My mate said, "What did the Falcons win then?" It's like, "Nah, but we came so close." I'm like, "What do you care?" And it's like, "Because I hate the Saints." And I don't know why I hate the Saints, but you have to. Anyway, the Falcons played the Saints this weekend, and it was ugly. It was a really ugly game of football. Two really ugly teams, two really poor offensive performances. Derek Carr is such a funny situation for the Saints to get themselves into, because they're paying him so much money to be barely more productive than Desmond Ridder, who's missed 3 games this year. He threw over 300 yards and they didn't score a touchdown full stop. It was like just field goals. The Falcons got a pick 6 of Jesse Bates. That was the only real sort of boat excitement. There was a pass actually from Ridder to Bijan Robinson in the seam, who he was like on his back foot, jumping with a pass rush in front of him, just floated over. It was the perfect pass from somebody I have zero faith in. I couldn't believe I was watching Desmond Ridder make that sort of pass. And it came down to the Saints drove down by sort of 9 points, went for a field goal to try and get within, and they put it wide. And that was how the game ended, on a missed field goal. It's the same day that we talked about kickers. But there's just something so petty about this rivalry. Better rivalries exist. There are better teams that have more storied rivalries than the Falcons and the Saints. But the Falcons and the Saints are 54-54 in the overall regular season series. The Falcons will refuse to put the Saints' name on the scoreboard. It was Falcons versus visitors yesterday, which is always it's such a nothing thing, but it's just kind of like, yeah, all right. It's like, yeah. And the Falcons overtook the Saints in the division. The Atlanta Falcons, the much maligned, atrocious Atlanta Falcons, are top of the NFC South for another week and have a better divisional record. They play each other again right at the end of the year, so it's the final game of the season. So I expect that one to be flexed into some sort of prime time, so that the world can be subjected to this particular horror show. But there was a time not too long ago, a couple of years ago, Falcons and the Saints played each other on back-to-back Thanksgiving Thursday night footballs, and I think the Falcons lost both because we were in a real mess. But I distinctly remember sort of people that I know in America sort of falling out with their family over this. It's like it would be the equivalent of having United Liverpool on Christmas Eve. It's like, why would you do that, knowing like you've got to sit together anyway? But like those sort of families of those teams sitting down together to watch each other on like a day in your holiday, and it's just like, that's how I'm going on. Yeah. Anyway, I've got nothing to say about this other than I love this fixture because it brings out the absolute worst in everybody on my timeline. It was a real mess, and I also feel like I'm a long supporter of the NFL becoming more toxic in its in its fan bases. I'm all for people really despising each other the way that these two teams do. Long may it continue, and everybody deserves a team that they hate as much as I hate the New Orleans Saints. I look forward to talking about this again on New Year's Day or whatever. That's all I've got to say.
I mean, that was excellent, because I feel like you say, it brings out the pettiness, which I'm always here for. And, you know, if there's an app that can harbour this sort of pettiness, it's Twitter. And I remember in the summer that someone put out a tweet that said, like, oh, who is every team's like biggest rival? I remember some, like, must have been relatively big account from either the Saints or the Falcons said like the Panthers or something, and they got absolutely set upon by both sets of fans to say, no, it's them. It's them. We hate them, not the Panthers. So yeah, absolutely right in the fact that this is like you say, it's not the biggest rivalry.
Game of the week. Game of the week. Yeah. Don't go and watch it. Best game of the week, but do not watch it. I promise you, it's not worth watching.
For those few sweet plays, I mean, yeah, it's quite a decent margin of victory as well. 9 points, and I've had this experience of watching Derek Carr flail around for 4 quarters in a loss against your team. It's great. He's the perfect villain because he's not threatening in any way, shape, or form. So it's like harmless quarterback trying to beat you, and he doesn't. So it's fine a lot of the time.
This is a final thing. This is totally totally irrelevant to everything I just said. To touch on Derek Carr, he has played the Atlanta Falcons now 3 times in his career. He has lost all 3 games. He has looked pretty terrible in 2 of those 3 games, and has lost by multiple scores in 2 of those 3 games. It's so funny that he's getting paid loads of money by the New Orleans Saints to quarterback against a team that he cannot beat in a division that is very bad. Long may it continue. I appreciate I'm setting myself up for failure there, but yeah, long may it continue, Derek Carr. I salute you.
The Falcons will be in the playoffs with an 8-9 record by that time, anyway. So.
That's all I care. At this stage, I've seen too. We'll move away from the Falcons at some point. I apologise for constantly bringing them up, but I've had enough of everybody going week to lose and get better draft picks when I've just seen us take tight ends and wide receivers and guards I don't care. I don't care. Give me my blowout loss to the Cowboys. I just want that at this stage.
That sweet, sweet darkness. I'll move on into a team that I'm talking about a lot at the minute, which is the Texans. Obviously, they played the Jags. This was also quite hilariously with our kicker talk earlier. A game that included a few missed field goals, one at the end for the Texans, which they attempted to tie the game up, and it was missed by Danny Amendola's brother, I think. Anyway, yeah, they avenged the loss to the Texans earlier in the season. And, this is something that we talked about last week as well, in the fact that these 2 teams are probably going to be quite good for the next few years, and this is going to be must-watch TV. This was obviously must-watch TV for the potential division decider that it was. The Jags are actually really good now, I think. They're one of the best teams in the AFC, sorry. And they would have been the 1 seed had the Chargers beat the Ravens last night, which obviously was never going to happen, but it was still a possibility at that time. But yeah, both quarterbacks played well, as did their receivers. How novel. And, if you add in Anthony Richardson to this division in a few years, this is going to be a good 3-horse race, isn't it, this? I'll try not to make this too Texans-centric because, I've done that a lot recently. But yeah, the AFC South is like the next up-and-coming division, like the hip-happening place to be, I think. I know we kind of anointed some divisions in the past. The AFC West used to be it, and it used to be the NFC East, but I feel like the wheel's spinning a little bit towards the AFC South now. These 2 teams are good, and like I say, Anthony Richardson's coming back. The Colts in the 7th seed at the minute. Shane Steichen's a very good head coach. It's good. It's good down there.
No, it is. I haven't seen this game yet. No, I haven't seen this game yet. So I got sidetracked a little bit this evening, but I think the one thing, like the Jaguars are still a weird team to figure out. I can't work them out. I don't know. It's odd. They've beaten Buffalo obviously in London earlier this season. They should have beaten Kansas City earlier this season. Kind of gave that game away. I think Kansas City really struggled on offense that day, and they should have done more with the time of possession that they had. But then, they got destroyed by the 49ers, and obviously lost to Houston earlier in the season. I don't know, they're just an odd team to work out at the moment. I feel like their ceiling is, Trevor Lawrence is talented enough to take them to the Super Bowl. I'm convinced of it.
Yeah.
But then you could also see a situation where I think they'll win the division now with the lead that they've got. I don't know what more Houston will have to chase them down. But you could also see them losing in the first round of the playoffs in kind of some hideous manner as well. For as much as people mock the Chargers for what happened in that wild card game last week, last year, for 3 quarters of it, pretty much Jaguars got outplayed. They did, and they were the division winner in that situation, and the Chargers really, kind of embarrassed them for a large part of that game. I can't work them out yet. I don't know if this is the team that gets destroyed by the 49ers, but then are they the team that beat the Bills and beat the Texans and are winning the division? Like that's my kind of. I can't quite place them yet. The other thing I think with Houston is they're going to have to find a way of beating Indianapolis again because that's the only reason why they're currently out of the playoffs in the 7th seed. So like, they're going to have to work that one out. But I don't know. I just like the Jags are strange. Like I just can't pinpoint them.
They might have that thing that we were talking about with the Chiefs last week in the fact that by the end of the season or towards the end of the season, they'll have time to work it out and find themselves before the playoffs begin for a week or two. But yeah, like I say, they're a good team, and so the Texans by those things, and they're only going to get better, I think, as the times go on because they've both found good head coaches. If we're going back to the Carolina thing, and that's what they need to do. I think in my article earlier on this evening, I mentioned both the Jags and the Texans, probably because it's all I talk about nowadays. But also because they've had a massive turnaround because they've found good head coaches as well, and that's what the Panthers need to do with their next hire. But that's enough of that. Let's talk about some memes and gifs then. Let's talk about some funny things that happened over the weekend. Or not so much in my case, actually, because I'm resurrecting Bullseye. For anyone who doesn't know, it's a darts-based TV show. If anyone's like 30 or younger, maybe a little bit generous with that. It's on Challenge all the time if you've got that channel. Basically, Jim Bowen used to say something where he said, let's have a look at what you could have won. Don't really know why. Just kind of rubbing people's noses in it when they didn't win. But it's kind of how Chargers fans are going to be feeling about Quentin Johnston versus Zay Jones last night. Zay Jones got 2 touchdowns and looked genuinely quite useful. Fans around the league will be looking at their first round pick and thinking, yeah, they might be a bust as well. I'm looking at you Raiders fans. But yeah, I'm thinking of Jim Bowen and how he's telling people they could have won other things in the draft.
I just think of that.
Tayyib, what was yours?
Sorry.
Oh, go on.
No,
Sorry, go on.
sorry.
No, go on.
No, I was going to say, I think of
on.
that choice, that wide receiver choice or whatever, and it's like, was it the Eagles taking, was it Jalen Reagor when Justin Jefferson was it Jalen Reagor?
Right.
Like 2 picks later, or a pick later or something. It's just kind of like, man, how do you fumble that badly? I still quite. I'm not writing off the Chargers. John, I'm not writing him off. I think he's good, or might be good. I really liked him in college. He's one of the few players that I remember watching and going, he is like legitimate. But I maybe have to reevaluate my scouting process as a result. Not necessarily as a result, but kind of moving forward. Yeah.
No, just really, really quickly, I don't think he's a bust quite yet. I think it's stupid to say that after even one season, maybe even after a season and a half. Chargers aren't using him properly, but put next to Zay Jones for Twitter to look at, it's so easy to say. Why didn't you get him instead? Because he's good, obviously. But anyway, go on, Tom. Go for your one.
Going for me, right? So yeah. I have gone with what have I gone with? I've gone with sad Pablo Escobar. There's a picture of him just sat in a swing, looking distraught, stood in an empty swimming pool, looking really sad. Sat just watching his dinner get cold. That was me as I looked at my fantasy football roster at 9:30 yesterday. Not 9:30 yesterday. 9:30 this morning, and realised that I hadn't taken Los Angeles Rams running back Williams off of my bench and put him into my roster, as I said I would. Only to see he had 39 fantasy points in a game that I needed to win to keep my slim playoff hopes alive in my home league. As a very real chance that I'm going to go from first to worst. As arguably the worst defense of the Oxford Shield, which is sad. So that's me. I'm not Pablo Escobar, but I am feeling like him stood in a swimming pool.
Tayyib, what about you? You kind of touched on something that we talked about.
I don't know how I can follow that one. No, this is more of a meme, like pointing fun at Aaron Rodgers, because like how many times, like in the end of his Green Bay career, did people always say, "Oh, Aaron Rodgers should be given more say on personnel matters and like who gets contracts and who they bring in?" Well, can I just say, Alan Lazard was a healthy scratch on Friday. Randall Cobb is like, I'm sure Randall Cobb was like playing when I was still in secondary school. Like I'm sure Randall Cobb, like when Rodgers won like his first MVP title, I'm sure Randall Cobb was in that team. Dalvin Cook is like MIA. Like he might have been confused for Pablo Escobar, such as his disappearance. You know what I mean? So like at this point in time, what I'm saying is, listen, the Jets were right to go get Aaron Rodgers because Zach Wilson isn't that guy. But Jesus Christ, they were wrong to get him and all his friends contracts as well. Like I don't know how they're going to work that one out. Like ultimately, like the hope is like, well, you know what I find bizarre about it as well is like Rodgers always kept saying to Green Bay, well, the guys around me aren't good enough. Well, he's bought everyone that was from Green Bay and gave them really good contracts. Do you know what I mean? Like I don't get it. Like it's bizarre, and as I said, like it's just another kind of like laughing point at like an ego-driven maniac, really.
And you're taking a lot of pleasure in that by the sounds of it.
Always. As I said, like I hate, like it's one thing I hate about the Pat McAfee show. Like he'll go on there, nobody ever challenges Rodgers. Like it's the only place he really talks to now. Do you know what I mean? Because ultimately, no one's ever going to really push him on anything. And I'm like, well, you said for years you wanted like personnel control or like a say in personnel. Well, you got it here, and instead of like saying, oh, like we should bring, like you just brought the guys that you said weren't good enough in Green Bay, so that you wanted more personnel control and like gave them really good contracts. Like I get like that's a really good friend, but I mean Jesus Christ, like what, like I said, like what are we gonna do? Like Eddie Lacy and Jordy Nelson are gonna come back? Like what's going on?
You see, you're saying like Aaron Rodgers is like the Harry Redknapp of quarterbacks, just bringing Jermaine Defoe and Peter Crouch and Nico Cranchard back. Right then, let's move on into our predictions. And Monday Night Football, which is actually Thursday Night Football, isn't it? I've written that wrong on the sheet, but yeah, let's just say, the Lions didn't really give us many points. They couldn't beat the Moon. They couldn't beat the Packers. Joe actually got 1 point for predicting the Packers win, but that's about it for everyone else. So let's move on into this week's Monday Night Football. Tonight, as we record on the Monday, the Bears going to Minnesota to play the Vikings. Obviously, I don't know why I said that. Willow, what about you? What's your prediction?
I've got the Vikings to win 28-24. My special prediction is that the Bears will have a double-digit lead heading into the fourth quarter. I just get a feeling that there's something weird about the Vikings. There's been something weird about the Vikings all this year and all last year in that they just seem to do things. What an awful sentence that is. The Vikings just seem to do things. They just seem to find a way to pull wins out of the bag when they shouldn't do. I know they lost last week, but the Bears, I don't really know. I think Justin Fields is playing himself into a position where they will have to have a legit conversation over how they're going to use the Panthers' first overall pick, or whether they just deal it for 1,000 other picks because somebody will give them that. But I still really like him, and I think he's playing really well. He's been coming off. He's just looked good, regardless of what's going on, kind of around it. So yeah, they lose. It's not his fault. Can I just say I've been really bad at this prediction thing. Also, I think I've got like 1 point. Good. I dread to. I don't know if you're keeping score, but please don't tell me the result.
I'll do. What I'll do is when we get to the end of the season, I'll do like a season long, but I stopped keeping score because we weren't all getting any points, so I just thought there's no point in tallying it. But we've got to see it through the feature through the whole season.
Cool.
Yeah, I'll tally up. I don't think any of us did very well, let's be honest. So almost like the perfect Bears game, really. Yeah. Play well, lose. Kind of like the Cardinals thing from earlier in the season.
Yeah.
Tayyib, what about you? What are you saying?
Well, I can't like hedge my bets now. I predicted Chicago in the ballsy callsy thing, so like I got to go Chicago now. Yeah, I'll go. I think it'll be really close, 1-score game. I'll go 23-21 Chicago. Just maybe like a missed field goal from Minnesota at the end, kind of comes a really hard time separating these two. I think the Bears have gotten better in the last few weeks, certainly on offense. The defense still isn't very good, but the offense they start to show some life. I think the Vikings are just kind of riding like an emotional roller coaster. And probably a little bit like, well, everything's gone against us and we're still fighting for this. But I think it'll be like a really close game. I just fancy Chicago on the road, maybe, like with less expectations than what they would have at home. And I think it was a 1-score game, the first game as well. Or it was until Fields got injured. and then Tyson Bagent came in, so it was close between them earlier on in the season. I think it'll be close again. I'll go Bears 23-21.
And what did you saying the missed field goal thing as your other little bet?
Yeah, I'll say missed field goal in the last seconds comes up short from Minnesota to give Chicago the win.
All righty. I've got another little close one as well. I'm like you, Tayyip, I also have the Bears in ballsy callsy as well, so I'm going to have to ride that one out. I've gone for the Bears 20-17, and I've got kind of a mixture of what both of you guys have said. I've got Fields play well and they'll go over 100 yards rushing or more. Another one of those, like you say, Justin Fields on the upswing, maybe going to give him a bit of a conversation on what they're going to do with that pick, because pretty much nailed on. They have a very, very high pick indeed. Don't see the Panthers doing too much now that they've fired Frank Reich. But that'll be it for us tonight, gents. An unbelievable amount of cross English football references in tonight's podcast, so commend you both for that. So if you're enjoying our cross-pollination between two sports and listening to us here, stay around, subscribe, like, and head over to touchdown.co.uk to read all of our stuff as well. Have a whole bunch of stuff coming out on Wednesday, as always, and then college football, CFL, fantasy, and all the rest of it as we move through the week. But guys, thanks for coming on today and joining us and giving us all your nonsense as always. But appreciate it. But thanks very much, and we'll see you next time.